Hello, welcome to Anita the Pedagogue channel. Today we are looking at writing or composition. We are looking at writing letters. Specifically, we'll be looking at formal letters. What is a letter? It is a written message that can be handwritten or printed on paper. It's usually sent to the recipient via email or by the post office in an envelope. Now, technology allows us to send letters by email. A formal letter is a type of written communication that follows a specific format and is used for official or business purposes. You can also write a formal letter to somebody in authority or your superior at work. Let's go on and look at the features of a formal letter. We begin with the writer's address. And the writer's address informs on where the letter is written from. And you have to situate it on the top right corner of the paper. And this is an example of the types of addresses we have. We have the block address, where everything follows the other one on the same line. Then we have the indented address, where you realize that everything is indented after the first line. We also have the punctuated block address. An example is there, where you realize that there is the use of punctuation. We also have the punctuated indented address. So for these addresses, you can begin with your full name. That is, if you want the recipient to know your exact address in case they are returning the letter, the exact name they should put on it, then fine, you can add your name. You can also decide not to include your name and just use your specific address. Take note of the punctuated addresses. You always use a comma after the name of the institution or the box number and end it with the town or country where the letter is coming from. At that point, you end with a full stop. So whether it is a name, your address is a street, you punctuate it, and when you end on the exact town or country, you punctuate it with a full stop. Let's move on to the next feature of a formal letter, which is the date. And the date informs us on when the letter was written, and it's usually written at the top right corner of the paper just below the address. So there are several ways of writing the date, but the preferred way of writing the date is when you write it in full. An example is 17th May 2023 or May 21st 2023, and as you can see, I've punctuated it correctly. There are other forms of dates as you can see below, but if you're writing a formal letter, the preferred one is to write in full. We also have the recipient address. Situate it at the top left corner of the paper, and the recipient address, usually begin it with the title of the recipient. That is, if person is in authority, then you write the person's address. Let's look at some examples. So we have Director of Human Resources, ABC Corporation, 754 Main Street, Suite 100, Yellowtown, USA, with the number. So for a recipient address like this, you have the name or the title of the person you're writing to, who is the Director of Human Resource, and then you have the address correctly written down. Or another example could be the Principal, Heaven Island College, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. So these are all forms of recipient addresses, and take note of the fact that I have included the title of the person that this letter is addressed to. Next, let's look at the salutation. That is a formal greeting. For example, dear sir, dear madam, or you can also write the specific name of the person you are addressing the formal letter to, like dear Miss William or dear Mr. Anson. Now you're to write the salutation at the left-hand side of the paper, right below the recipient's address. Make sure you end your salutation with a comma, as you see in the examples. Next, let's look at the heading. After you have written your greeting, dear sir or dear madam, the next thing is to write your heading, and that is a precise summary of the body or the purpose of the letter. You are to write the heading in capitals or uppercase and underline it. You are to write this right below the salutation. So an example is application for employment as a shopkeeper, or permission to absent myself from school, or effects of poor sanitation in Blue Town, or oil spillage at Cape 3 Points. So this gives the recipients an idea of what your letter is about. Let's move on to the next feature of the formal letter, which is the body of the letter. Now, the message of the letter is what is contained in the body, and it includes the introduction, the body, and conclusion of the letter. You are to write your letter in paragraphs, so your body must be written in paragraphs. Take note to use appropriate vocabulary and use varied sentences for effect. So in your introduction, you are to greet formally. If you do not know the person you're writing to, you introduce yourself and give the purpose for the letter. In your body, explain the purpose for the letter in well-structured paragraphs, and then you conclude by giving your recommendation, suggestion, or restate your message precisely. It is important to avoid the use of informal language, abbreviations, and contracted forms when writing a formal letter, so take note. Let's move on to the subscription. It is another feature of the formal letter. It is written at the end of the letter. Write it at the bottom of your letter, either at the right or left side of the paper. Make sure that you end your subscription with a comma. So examples of subscription for formal letters, kindly write yours sincerely, yours faithfully. Take note that it is only the yours that is capitalized. The sincerely or faithfully is written in lowercase, and ensure that you punctuate it with a comma. Let's move on to the very final part of our formal letter, which is the signature and full name. After you're done writing your subscription, append your signature below and write your full name, and your full name with a full stop. Include your position or title right below your name if necessary. Now, these are some examples of subscription with your signature and your full name. Your signature and your full name. Now, let's go on and look at a sample examination question and answer. Write a letter to the Member of Parliament of your constituency telling him or her about the rise in armed robbery in your area. Suggest at least 2 ways to solve it. So when you are given an examination question of this nature, first of all, you need to ask yourself what type of letter you've been given. And this is a formal letter because you're writing it to somebody in authority. Here, that is the Member of Parliament. So, who is your recipient? Your recipient is the Member of Parliament of your constituency. So, you know right away that the title of the person you're addressing this letter to is the Member of Parliament of your constituency. Now, the next thing we need to look at is the purpose for the letter. Why are you writing this letter? 1 is to tell him or her about the rise in armed robbery. And also, another purpose for this letter is to suggest at least 2 ways to solve it. So, in your letter, make sure that you have addressed the purpose for it. That is 1 to talk about the rise in armed robbery, and 2 to suggest at least 2 ways to solve it. Let's take a look at a sample. Starling Senior High School, P.O. Box 11, Labonia, Accra. And we also have our date, and that is the writer's address and the date well written. Then we move on to the recipient's address, and the recipient's address has the title of the person we are addressing this to, and this person is the Member of Parliament of Ablekuma Central Constituency, and the address is right there as well. Then we move on to the salutation, the greeting. Here we have Dear Mr. Arthur, because we know the name of the Member of Parliament. If you do not know the person you're addressing the letter to, you may say Dear Sir, Dear Madam, or Dear Sir or Madam, where you use a slash to separate the Sir and Madam. Then we have our heading, and our heading should give the recipient an idea of what the letter is about. So our heading is the recent rise in armed robbery incidents in Latibia-Koshi. We move on to the introduction. And in your introduction, you talk about the purpose for your writing. Why are you writing? You may want to greet if you want, or you may just go straight ahead and give the reason why you're writing the letter. So in this case, we have I'm writing to express my concerns about the rise in armed robbery incidents in our area. The frequency of these incidents has been on the rise, causing great distress and fear among the residents. As your constituent, I urge you to take immediate action to address this issue. So right away, we know the reason why this letter is being written. Then in the body, we need to address two things. Talk about the rise in armed robbery incidents in the area, and also give two suggestions as to how this can be checked, and that is stated right in there. Then we move on to the conclusion. In the conclusion, we give suggestions. In conclusion, we re-emphasize our points. So in this example, I hope you will take actions that would 1. Increase police patrol and the installation of street lights in Latibia-Koshi to address this issue. I look forward to hearing from you soon on this matter. So in this conclusion, the two suggestions are highlighted. We have the subscription signature and full name next, and we see yours sincerely, well punctuated with the comma, the signature, and the full name of the writer, Elizabeth Okra. So this is our sample. We'll now move on and look at some likely examination questions. As school prefect, write a letter to your district or municipal or metropolitan chief executive requesting the maintenance of the buildings in your school. 2. Write a letter to the manager of a hotel complaining about the poor service you received during your stay. 3. Write a letter to the editor of a newspaper expressing your concerns about the increased rate of cybercrime in your community. 4. Write a letter to the director of a company applying for a job vacancy advertised in a newspaper. And 5. Write a letter to the chairman of your local government council complaining about the poor state of the roads in your community. I hope you'll try these questions. And this brings us to the end of our lesson today. Do like, comment, subscribe, and share. Share with me in the comment section what writing or composition topic you would want me to feature next in my video.